begin this morning talk based on the book we worked on. First, I encourage all of you to take a moment to examine your motivation. Try to have a positive motivation to begin this book talk. And that's something really important. Motivation is one of the most important things in Habituating Buddhism. So I encourage all of you to remember that, not just today, whenever you come to the center or whenever you sit on your cushion. So generating positive motivation for benefiting for all sentient beings is really important. And then I was thinking that what I'm going to talk about the book, and of course Allison has a lot of good things to discuss, and without her I do not think I can work on books like this way. But the thing is, I always think we take things for granted as a human being, which is this precious human life we have. We take it for granted. So try to remember that more often we obtained this precious human life, which is rare. It's not a coincidence. We planted some positive seeds in our previous lives. Therefore, we connected spirituality and want to develop our human mind to do something good for others and to take care of our own selves and at the same time and learn some skills to serve others. So that's what we can do having this precious human life. That's what the Tibetan Buddhists call precious human life. Not just always focusing on our own selves, and that's not precious human life. That's the selfish life we have. But we all are here today and wanting to learn something from this talk, which we are offering today. Stop biting the tail you are chasing. So we have to, at one point, stop biting that, using this precious human life. We have this opportunity to do that. We're capable of doing it. If we don't have this precious human life, when I say precious human life, we're a human being, and a human consciousness can be really positive and also can be really dangerous. We can destroy the world having this human conscious mind. And also we can serve the world, serve others, based on this human mind. But all of you are here, we're serving to share the meaning of this book. How to really stop chasing or biting the tail we are. Biting or chasing for so long. If we don't have this precious human life, we are not capable of doing it. Stop doing it. We're incapable of learning how to read. Stop biting the tail that we have been chasing. But since we all obtained this precious human life, we are capable. We can learn we can put ourselves together how to stop chasing, biting the tail we have biting. We should wake up. I'm a really direct person. Time to wake up. The tail we have been biting or chasing have not brought any peace, happiness into our individuals' lives and into our society and the community. It has not brought any peace and happiness. All the suffering, all the pain, physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain, are caused by this pattern we have, biting our tails of emotions, of emotional patterns. And that is bringing a lot of pain and suffering to our own selves and others. So therefore, this book, what I think is one of the best Lobjong book that we have worked on. Because it has the essence of Buddhist Lobjong teachings in Buddhist tradition. But also a lot of insights of wisdom, well thinking. So therefore, as I said, we have obtained this precious human life. Try to not waste this precious human life. Make this precious human life meaningful for your own selves and for the society and for others. Try to really habituate some skills. Maybe not biting the tail you have been biting too much. Maybe loosen a little bit. Or once a while, let go of the tail. It brings more peace and more happiness. It's better and use the logic, intellectual mind to think, okay, I haven't been doing this. We all have different patterns that we have been chasing. Be honest with yourself. Has those patterns brought you happiness, peace, joy, or not? 99%. The strong patterns that we have been chasing is not bringing any positive, peaceful, joyful feelings. It agitates us. It agitates ourselves. It agitates people who are around us. But if we learn how to let go of that pattern once a while, it can bring a lot of peace and joy to the community, to the society, or to your family, or yourself. Just think, this is a big Dharma center. If you're biting your tail that you're chasing all the time, and it's still biting and enter this shrine room, how grumpy you are. How much heaviness, how much unhappiness you will bring to the environment. Just examine yourself. But if some of the Sangha members are not that biting the tail constantly, when they enter the shrine room, how much peace and warmth that person can bring to the community, to the center. And the minute you feel that, you see that person, you feel some peace, or you can feel the peace, warmth from that Dharma brother or Dharma sister. Just compare it. We have been biting this tail too long. Even though tail is starting bleeding, but we still biting. We don't know how to loosen our job. We don't know how to. That brings a lot of unhappiness and suffering. So, therefore, I encourage all of you, really use the precious human life for a good purpose. Learn how to bring some peace into your world and your life where you are. And using the Lojong practice, mind training practice, and habituate a new skill or new pattern, letting go of the tail you're chasing or chasing the emotional patterns. This whole thing about a Buddhist path is learning a new skill, how to let go of our emotions, how to reduce our emotions, the whole Buddhist path. And then slowly at one point we can develop this skill and we can liberate all emotions on the spot. But we need to begin to how to start doing this. And also we need to learn this skill to recognize how much we have been chasing the tail. We have not recognized how strong our patterns are and how solid that pattern is. So to be able to break down that pattern, which is so solid, need a really special hammer, like diamond-like hammer to break that solid pattern, break it to pieces. So which is Buddhist path and Lojong practice and mind training and mindfulness, introspection. We have to have mindfulness and introspection to really recognize how strong our pattern is. And to be able to recognize our emotions and our patterns. And also we have to have the skills to really learn how to let go of the patterns that we have developed. So these two things I just mentioned, mindfulness and introspection, are the most important thing to help us to letting go of the tail we have been chasing. Without these two, actually cannot find any way to recognize our emotional patterns. And without these two, actually really hard for us to put any Buddhist practices into the path. So therefore, it's just like to begin the book talk, and Allison will say something about the book.
I'll say something. So I like everything that Rinpoche says. So I'm just going to comment on a few of them. The first one was just the metaphor of biting the tail you're chasing. We actually didn't come up with it. It was come up with by Shambhala, but it's such a brilliant metaphor for a lot of reasons. So like if we really think about the emotional habits that we have, first of all, just like on a personal level, whenever I'm chasing after habits that I know are going to end up in suffering, I just make myself dizzy and exhausted And just like Rinpoche said, when you're biting your tail, you're causing yourself to bleed. You know, you're causing your own pain, and you're doing it anyway. When my dog does it, my dog Kawamarbu, sometimes when he's chasing his tail and he bites it and sits down, I think it's really cute. But when I do it, it's not. It's so painful. And then the other thing I think is really great about the metaphor is it displays the meaning of the word samsara, which in the Dharma is the word for ordinary life. So this ordinary world that we live in is called samsara. And one way that we translate it is saying that it's cyclic. It goes in a circle. And it means the same thing as acting out of habit. So when we're in samsara, we just do the same things over and over again because we don't know how to do anything else. And so from the time that we're born until the time that we die, we're sort of just acting out these same patterns over and over again in a circle, and we don't have any way to get out of them. And I know for myself, that's why I got interested in the Dharma, was I wanted to stop doing things that I knew were making me miserable. And I knew, I like what Rinpoche said, sometimes when we're actually thinking about letting go of our emotions, we could feel defensive. I mean, we might think, that it's the other person's fault or the other person should change. But if we're really honest, like for me, if I'm really honest with myself, when I'm suffering a lot, I would just do anything to be able to pacify my own emotions. And I don't care what the other person did, I just want to feel better. And I think that's really what the Dharma is about. And sometimes when we come into a Dharma center, we're not pragmatic enough. We don't really understand that that's what the Dharma is. The Dharma is about teaching ourselves new behaviors so that we can feel better. And then when we feel better, we're able to serve others. You know, when we feel bad inside, we're not serving others. Most of the time when I feel bad inside, I'm sharing my unhappiness with others, and I'm making them feel worse. And I don't even have the wherewithal to feel bad about that. You know, I just share that unhappiness. So when we're thinking about practicing the Dharma, we're really thinking about, am I capable of reducing my own suffering? Do I believe that? I believe that. That's why I practice. And I hope everyone here either believes that or is even open to the possibility that that's possible. Because the Dharma, actually in the traditional teachings, the Dharma is likened to a medicine. And our suffering is likened to a sickness. So if we practice the Dharma, we can actually heal in a way that we've never realized healing was possible. We always thought, like, I'll just be the best possible version of this person who's suffering. But the Dharma is not teaching about being the best possible version. The Dharma is talking about completely transforming altogether and not being that person who's suffering. And that's the example of the lineage masters, of the spiritual masters, the beings up on our shrine. And we also have beings in our tradition called bodhisattvas, and these are beings who they've really worked on mind training, like Rinpoche just mentioned. So they've really applied mind training. They're working all the time on trying to benefit others, and they become highly realized beings. And these bodhisattvas can directly take on other suffering. They gain the ability, like if somebody is ill or ill or really suffering, there are times that these bodhisattvas can actually directly take that. And it's a beautiful idea that none of us is capable of. But certainly, if we reduce our own suffering, in a sense, we're taking on others. We're relieving other suffering. Because we're not adding to it. We're not sharing our suffering with others. So there is some relief that we can offer others, even just in this normal life that we have. So I like to, just reflect often on the benefits of practicing Dharma. When we sit down to practice meditation, we might not have the sense of, I'm sitting down to practice and that actually is going to enable me to help other beings. But if we're really diligent and we take Dharma as a lifelong path, certainly it's something that we're all capable of. We also have an idea in the Buddhist teachings called Buddha nature, that every single being, no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, throughout their life, that they have the ability to express wisdom. They have the ability to express unlimited compassion. And every single being here, and including mice and insects, anyone who has a mind has the ability to do that. Maybe not in this current lifetime, but sooner or later we all have the ability to express wisdom and compassion. So none of us needs to feel like we're hopeless, or up until now I couldn't do any better than this. So with the Dharma, we can just start from right here. And if we have some sense of belief, I'm capable of reducing my own suffering if I develop myself spiritually, that's good enough. And certainly we can do it. I just wanted to mention one more thing about the precious human life. So the precious human life is also a really important idea in the Dharma. So the fact that we take the precious human life for granted is something that we could contemplate intellectually. For example, there's a lineage master in our tradition named Long Chenpa, and he describes it this way. He says, sometimes people just have a human life. And the people who have a human life are people who don't care anything about spirituality at all. They don't really have a thought for others. They're not really thinking about engaging in positive actions. They're just going about their daily life. They're engaging in negative actions that harm others. And they have a human life, but it has nothing to do with the connection to compassion or spiritual development or anything like that. And that would be probably the majority of beings on the planet. And so everybody here already has a little bit more awakening than that. And we've come to this center because we have the sense that there's more we can do with our lives. We have the sense like I could be a better person than I am now. So already we're using our human life a little bit more than that. And then Long Chenpa describes a near human life, which is we have some spiritual connection, but we're not really that committed. But we do have some sense of right and wrong. We're making some effort. Sometimes maybe we're engaging in practice, a formal Dharma practice or something like that. But sometimes we're not. We're kind of off and on. We're not really, So we're connected, but not totally connected. And so we've gone up a little bit from this just ordinary human life where we don't really care about anything. And then the precious human life, Long Chenpa describes as being really fully committed to spiritual development and thinking I'm going to make the most out of the life I have. And whatever capacity, whatever I'm capable of, because we may be capable of different things, but whatever it is I'm capable of, I'm definitely going to work towards that. And trying to be really steady and just develop towards that goal. So when we think about the precious human life in that way, and we think about how many beings are there on the planet right now, who are really fully committed to trying to develop themselves the best they can, to become a happier person, but also to serve others, we can see that this is a really small number. And in my opinion, I still think that's something that everyone here is capable of. We may not all be capable of the same things. We may have different strengths, different talents, different capabilities, but we're all certainly capable of thinking of the person that we want to be and making a lot of effort towards that. And I fully believe that if we work on Dharma practice, we will notice not only a reduction in our own suffering, but we're going to notice people around us are happier. People around us are happier because a lot of the time, we're the ones that are bringing others unhappiness. We're just not thinking about it. We're always thinking about how other people make us unhappy, but we're not really thinking about all the unhappiness that we bring to others. So these are things that we think about, especially in the Lojong teachings. We kind of turn our normal way of thinking on its head. Our normal way of thinking is to blame others and to think about how others are doing everything wrong, but we're actually doing everything okay. And in the Lojong teachings, we're really just concerned about what am I doing? And is what I'm doing okay? And is what I'm doing making the kind of progress in my own spiritual development that I want to make? And we're not really thinking about what other people are doing because ultimately, other people are going to do what they're going to do, and we can't make them be different than they are. You know, the only thing that we can really do is focus on ourselves and focus on, you know, being a better person. Really trying to bring that transformation about.
So, what do we have been chasing? 5 poisons.
Better say what the 5 poisons are.
Pride, attachment, anger, ignorance, jealousy. We have been chasing these. Maybe we have more than 5 poisons that we have been chasing. We have been chasing those. Just logically, if we think things logically, it makes sense. How can we find any happiness and peace if we continuously chase all those poisons or emotions that disturb, that agitate ourselves and others? For example, like what Rinpoche said, the angry one will never find peace. Everywhere we have this like pattern, get angry all the time. How can we find peace? We will never ever find any peace. Then it makes sense, whoever is around us, how can they feel any like peace and happiness from us? We're going to be the cause of this pain and the suffering for others and for ourselves, for the community, for whoever is around. So Buddhist path is focusing on developing the quality of our mind and emotions. Bring more positive things to our mind and emotions, and develop that side of individual selves that automatically help to bring the peace and happiness to the family, community, and the society, to the world. It perfectly makes sense. Look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He developed that quality. He stopped to chasing that tail. Wherever he is, it doesn't matter who he is with. And that energy which he has give a lot of positive, peaceful feelings. People can feel it. I'm not sure it's like a good place to say this, but when His Holiness is with George W. Bush, look how positive and how peaceful George W. Bush looks like. Of course, he has potential to connect to that, but that's the power of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He developed that quality. He stopped chasing those patterns. Otherwise, none of us can do that. We are going to be so grumpy and so cold and so withdrawn and cannot connect. But he can do that because he has been really developing himself. Therefore, wherever he goes, he can give that warmth. He can share that warmth to others. So we all are capable of doing it. As Allison was saying, we all have good energy. And especially, we all are connected to spirituality. And we believe that we can develop ourselves, or we need spirituality to help us to find some peace and happiness individually, and also want to do something positive while we're alive and using this really precious human life
So the point is, we need to learn how to stop chasing 5 poisons. It needs a lot of mindfulness. It needs a lot of discipline. It needs a lot of diligence. It needs a lot of focus to watch ourselves. We have not been even recognized how emotional we are, or which emotion is so strong we constantly chase. We constantly identify with. We have not even developed the skill to see ourselves. We see everything is caused external world, not internal world, which is the drama of 5 poisons are really causing all the unhappiness that we're experiencing every single day, and all the happiness that we share with others every single day. It's coming from in. It's not nice to hear. But if we're honest with ourselves to watch it, a minute you wake up, just watch your emotions. Physically, how grumpy you are. Mentally, how foggy you are. Emotionally, how agitated you are. You don't want to talk. You don't want to do anything. You just bothered by everything. That's who we are. That's the nature of who we are. But there's an uncommon thing that we all want to do. We want happiness. We want peace. We want to live cheerfully. And also we want to give others, our family members, or society, or community, we want to give something positive. We do want it. I do not think anyone wants to bring suffering to their community, to their home, where they live, and to the office, where they share the work with others. We all want to do something good, but we don't know. We're so lost. We're lost because we have been only chasing these 5 poisons, as Rinpoche said. The one who is angry constantly, how can that person find any peace? The one who is always greedy, that person will never ever find any contentment, any satisfaction. In the same way, if we were like complete in these 5 poisons constantly, we cannot find any mental, emotional, physical peace. And that 5 poisons or emotional poisons can cause physical and health problems, of course mental and emotional. So it is something worth to investigate and be honest with ourselves. Try to not develop, oh, I'm not worth to do this, and blame on yourself. It's not a smart thing to do. We have it. Culturally, we either blame on others. Everything is others' fault. Our parents' fault, our spouse's fault, and the community's fault, world's fault. We have been developing that. Or everything is my fault, and blaming on ourselves. And do not want to even live. We have been using those 2 things to avoid or skip from the things that we have been facing. It's not smart. It does not help us to find any peace. Instead of doing that, take the path of Buddha Dharma and using the Lojong practice, mind training practice, habituate a new skill. It takes time, but it's worth to investigate our energy and skills. It's so painful. be honest, like, I have been practicing Buddha Dharma for so many years. The day before yesterday, there was a young girl asking me, how long have you been practicing? I said, oh, maybe 30 years or 35 years. It's not easy, really, be honest. But if we don't stop, be stubborn on the path of the spirituality, just keep trying, not letting go of spirituality and practice, not letting go of to develop our emotions and mind, and the quality of the mind and emotions. And we will reach, at one point, reach a certain point to feel the benefit of spirituality. And once in a while, we can really completely let go of that tail. It feels good. So it needs, this is what we're talking about, chasing bad poison, or many other emotional tails that we have been chasing. So these things are, I'm going to hand it to Allison, and she may have more things to add on.
One thing that we can do to investigate how our emotional lives are causing us so much turmoil is to start to notice how spontaneously we can recall some kind of past injury. For example, like at any time during the day, something that happened even like 10 or 20 years ago, it's possible that we can recall that event and become completely agitated by it, even though it happened such a long time ago. And it's not happening right now. There's definitely nothing inflicting that suffering on us right now, but our mind can recall it, and we can recreate that same suffering in our own mind, even without the presence of any particular condition. And if you are not convinced by that, then the next time you come to the center, or the next time you go home to sit down in meditation, do the same thing. Sit down in meditation and notice how the room is completely quiet. Notice how absolutely nothing's happening, and notice how your mind can recall something which makes you agitated, and you can recreate the feeling of being upset or agitated about something in the presence of no external condition whatsoever. And we all do it. It's something that happens. So sometimes people come to Rinpoche and they say, Rinpoche, I'm doing daily practice and I'm getting worse. So Rinpoche says, why are you getting worse? And they said, because I sit down to practice and I'm agitated all the time. And then Rinpoche says, no, you're not getting worse. You're doing that all the time anyway, but now you're watching yourself do it. And so we can actually have this feeling that because our main coping mechanism in life is avoiding. We're avoiding everything. The main thing we're avoiding is death, right? We're avoiding understanding that we're going to die. And because we're avoiding death and loss, then we're avoiding everything else, because we don't really want to believe that this life that I have right now is not going to continue the way I want it to. So then even from moment to moment, we're avoiding. We're avoiding the emotional experience of loss or the emotional experience of seeing change come. And so that plays out by, if we can continue the mental habits that we have, we can just avoid all of that, right? We can completely tie up all our energy in things that happened or things that we project are going to happen, and we never ever have to deal with the present moment of life. So it's definitely, there's no value judgment on the fact that we're all avoiding. We're all doing that all the time. The only people who aren't doing that are enlightened beings, are realized beings, who are okay with the present moment. But on the other hand, it is, I think what Rinpoche said is true, it's worth investigating the way that we do that. Because otherwise, I don't know, if I didn't take the time to investigate how miserable I make myself, I don't know that I would be motivated to sit down and practice. So there has to be a personal connection that we can develop with, I actually see the way that I'm making myself unhappy, and so I'm willing to put in the effort and the time that it takes to start to unravel that and to start to change it. And so we have to actually understand that we're doing it, And then we also have to actually understand that we're capable of not doing it. And both of those things require investigation. Nobody, I mean, Rinpoche can sit up here and he can tell you that's what you're doing and that you're capable of not doing it, but ultimately we all have to personally come to that understanding ourselves. So we can't skip over that part. We have to start to see ourselves more realistically. Sometimes Rinpoche has given me the advice. So Rinpoche had a lot of criticisms about me. But Rinpoche's probably most pervasive criticism is that I'm unfriendly and unapproachable. He says, you're a Grabowski, it's my family's name. You're a Grabowski, and your family is unapproachable and unfriendly. So, it's like when I see myself, I think that's not true. But then Rinpoche says, no, you have to look at it from how other people see you. Look at how other people see you from the outside and think about how you are. Don't just always take your own side. And then when I can think about it and I think about how other people see me, it's a lot easier to understand why I have disagreements with people or why things happen the way that they do, because I'm participating in a lot of that, or I'm creating a lot of it. I have a lot of faults. And so investigating who we are is a really important part of the Dharma. And the reason why Rinpoche says it's so painful is because we discover a lot of things that we didn't realize were true. I didn't realize, I thought, I don't get along with people because other people are hard to get along with. Rinpoche said, no, you're hard to get along with. So, that is painful. And it's painful to see those different sides of yourself that, of course we're avoiding. Because it's nicer to believe that everyone else is at fault. And I'm the one who's not at fault. And the problem is that if we keep thinking that way, there's just no way for us to ever feel better. Because the fact that we feel bad is always dependent on other people. There's nothing we can do. But if we think, I'm the person, if I were able to change, I would feel better, then there's a lot we can do about how we feel. And then there's a lot about what we can do to transform our relationships, to make our relationships better, to make the world a better place. And we can think about it in this way. So this is another thing that we talk about it's a quotation which I'm sorry that I can't give you perfectly. But basically it says, if there's a realized master in the room, and then there's a normal person in the room, so maybe the normal person is seeing everything as being negative and agitated, just the way that we see ordinary life. And the spiritual master is sitting in the same room, and they see a pure land, and they see peace, and they see everything being wonderful. It's just like a delightful garden, is what they say. So the spiritual master sees everything like a delightful garden. Does that mean that they really understand, that they believe there's no suffering in the world? No, of course it doesn't. But what it means is because of that peace that they have inside of themselves, they can see the world for how it is. But they're not wrapped up in all of the sorrow. They're not wrapped up in all the agitation themselves. And because of that, like the Dalai Lama, then they can go and interact with people from that place of love and that place of inner peace. So when you see the world like a delightful garden, you're not avoiding. You're just seeing life for how it is, but you're also feeling incredibly loving and okay inside yourself. And I can just remember being a teenager and just thinking, like, I don't know how I can keep living in this world. This world is such a painful and awful place. But when you start to have more of that feeling of peace and happiness inside, you can understand why the Dharma describes it that way. So being at the level of a realized master and seeing everything like a delightful garden, for me, it's a really wonderful thing to aim for in my practice. How wonderful it would be to be able to treat everyone that way, to be able to be so peaceful inside myself that I could treat everyone with that much love and contentment.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm not going to talk a lot, but I will let you ask your questions. But one thing I want to encourage you is develop the skill of mindfulness and introspection. Maybe Allison can clarify what mindfulness, what introspection is. It's really important to have those two things. Those two qualities are so important for our general Buddhist practice and Vajrayana practices. So I'm encouraging you to develop those two skills, because without those two skills, we cannot recognize which emotions are arising. We cannot even recognize when emotions are arising. So this is the advice and the suggestion. If you want to take as a practice, watch your emotions. Try to recognize them. And if you recognize whichever emotions are arising, try to not pursue the emotions. Try to not chase that emotions. But you will continuously pursuing that emotion and chase that emotion. I can guarantee you will do that. We all do that. We haven't been doing it. But if we use those two skills of mindfulness and introspection to watch our emotions, to watch our patterns, and to cut the unhealthy patterns, unskillful patterns, then try to not chase, not pursue. Use the Buddhist teachings. Try to do that. And at one point, you may successfully not pursuing, not chasing certain emotions. That will give you more courage to keep watching your emotions, not chasing, not biting the tail you have been chasing, you have been biting. And the second, I'm going to close the book talk. I will let you ask questions. Second is, take up a spiritual path. Find a spiritual community, which you guys have here. Support the community. Automatically going to support your spiritual path and practice. The cause and the condition is so powerful. If there is a perfect cause and a condition, then perfect result arise from that perfect cause and condition. The same way, if we invest our time and energy, effort to the Dharma and the community, to be a part of the spiritual group, we gain benefits from it. That's how cause and condition works. So try to take up a spiritual path. Try to consistent your spirituality. Try to consistently develop the quality of your mind and the spiritual path. Then you will feel the light. Then you will feel the warmth from that effort. So life is short. The life we just mentioned, precious human life, it's short. It's impermanent. The end is we have to accept, to leave everything behind. It doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're a beggar or most powerful person on earth, you have to say goodbye. We do not want to do that, but we have no choice. We do not have freedom to do that. So try to find ultimate freedom. Whether you live or you die, you have this peace in your heart. And you have this ultimate happiness in your heart. The heart, which is mind. Wherever this mind travels, this lifetime, next lifetime, next lifetime, if you believe in future life, if you embody that quality, you can find real freedom. Otherwise, we don't have any freedom.
If we want to find freedom, freedom from the tail we have been chasing. Freedom from 5 poisons. Then that is ultimate freedom. Otherwise, ordinary way to really try to gain freedom, maybe temporarily we can gain some freedom, but it's not ultimate. So I would say something.
So Rinpoche asked me to clarify mindfulness and introspection. So in the English language, usually we only use the word mindfulness. But in the Tibetan language, we break mindfulness out into 2 qualities. So the thing that we normally think of as mindfulness, we call remembering in the Tibetan language, and then introspection. And these are 2 complementary things that we do. First, introspection is really watching the mind. So we try to notice what's happening inside of us, because most of the time that's the thing that we're avoiding, right? So we start to notice, and then, this is the painful part. Oh, I'm getting angry again. Wow, look how impatient I am. Look how unforgiving I am. Look how resentful I am. But we see those things arising in the mind from moment to moment. It's kind of, it's kind of like a hailstorm when you start to look inside and you see just like one emotion rising on top of another. And also we can start to see how small the things are that we're reacting to. So a lot of things we can correct just by noticing them. Like, we can get so angry, seriously, because someone cuts us off when we're driving. We can become so angry because somebody speaks to us unkindly. We don't want them to speak to us that way. These small things that are happening all the time are robbing us of our peace of mind, and we're letting it. We're letting it. We don't have to. But we're putting a lot of importance on a small things that happens, and we're focusing on it that way, and we're chasing our emotional reactions. It's worth thinking about, is that really the way that I want to continue living? Is that the way I want to keep doing things? So introspection is this watchful part, creates some personal discomfort when we start to look inside. And then the remembering quality is remembering whatever it is we've been practicing. So, for example, if you're coming to the center, maybe you started training in your motivation. So one thing you could do, for example, if you had mindfulness, so somebody cut you off on the road, you could think about maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they need to get to the hospital. You could start to think about that person's situation and focus on what might be happening for them rather than just focusing on yourself. You could focus on the wish for them to be happy. You could think, that person seems like they're in a bad state of mind. I know when I'm in a bad state of mind, I feel really bad. That makes me act badly towards others. And you could start to have the wish for them and everyone else in the world who's experiencing unhappiness to be happy. It just really depends on personally, kind of what aspect of practice we've connected with. But we can always find a way to apply that practice, because the Dharma is intensely practical. That's all the Dharma is a big set of tools that we use. And the better that we learn how to use those tools, the more quickly we can pacify our own emotional responses. And so when we rely on these 2 things, we have introspection, and we're honest with ourselves, and we start to notice, wow, these patterns really dominate my state of mind, and I react in this way all the time. Then we can also start with the remembering quality. Oh, I need to remember, this seems to really work when I get agitated in this way. If I practice in this way, it seems to calm me down. And we remember to apply that practice. And the more that we do that, the more quickly we can apply the remembering. And something else that we'll probably start to notice is the more quickly that we can remember to practice, the better. Because oftentimes what happens is the longer we wait, the more out of control the pattern gets. So if I get angry and I don't notice it, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I can remember when I was younger and I was angry about things, like I could be angry for 3 weeks before I knew I was angry. It can just go on for a long time. So in that case, if we've gone on being angry about something for days or weeks, some people have been angry for years. And then we just try to apply mindfulness, think how much we have to apply practice, because we've let that just get bigger and bigger and more dominating and more dominating. And then we have to apply so much more practice to calm it down. We have to do it for a long time. But the goal with Dharma practice is, the sooner we notice that the patterns come up, like I'm angry, maybe I have to apply the Dharma really forcefully. Reflect on the faults of anger. Reflect on how if I act this anger out, I'm going to feel so much worse. If I just keep feeding this anger and I refuse to let it go, I can think about how much worse everything gets when I'm angry. I cause conflicts. I have a fight with someone, and then I get really agitated in myself, and then my thinking gets like more and more vicious. There's just so many negative things that happen if I let myself continue this way. So maybe we have to work on it really hard for that period of time, but we can, kind of gradually calm it down. We might not be able to release it completely, but maybe we can calm it down some, and the result isn't as bad. So that's really different than just letting it go and build and build and build, and we explode. At a certain point, we're just angry, and that's all we are. So we don't want to get to that place. Once we get to that place, it's really, really hard to bring peace of mind to others, right? So mindfulness and introspection, these are two tools that we can work on all the time. And then we just need to work, the other thing we need is a small toolkit of knowing kind of these are things that help me when I'm having a strong emotional reaction. And hopefully you're getting that from your Dharma practice, or you've gone to receive some teachings, but even focusing on your breath, working on elongating your breath can be really helpful. Even if you can't do anything else, that can help to calm your energy and your mind down. So then, once you recognize that this is something that you want to develop more, you can focus more energy on receiving teachings to help you do that and to develop that, and just invest more energy and time in your spiritual development.
Mm-hmm. If you have questions, we will try. Hi.
I would just say for questions, because we are recording for the podcast, if you could come to the microphone so we get your question on tape.
Can the microphone come to me?
I think she's on crutches.
Yeah. Just speak loud.
Okay.
We'll pick up.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Sorry. That's happening a lot these days. So I was curious about, and I came in late, so I'm not sure if you addressed this, whether a particular klesha is occupying all that space, Allison, that you're talking about. Can you speak to that? Like what habitual tendency, because being a Dharma practitioner for many years too, it tends to get stronger. So I don't know if more layers are being purified, with my practice and more education, just on a personal level. And if you could speak to the realms that are connected to the different kleshas, the 5 poisons, I would appreciate a review.
Well, I think I don't think we have enough time to connect the realms and with the 5 poisons. But I think I'm not going to say the more you practice, the afflictive emotions become stronger is going to be like a positive sign or a negative sign. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. And you're burning your karma or you're not burning your karma. The most important thing we need to focus on is if you recognize it's stronger, then try to not chase. Try to not pursuing them. If you're pursuing them, it doesn't matter. It will accumulate negative karma. It gets thicker. The kalasha is going to be thicker and stronger. But if you recognize the emotions are stronger, if you have tools not pursuing and chasing, and that emotion is not going to maybe accumulate strong karma. But the other thing is, as Dr. Rinpoche said, The sign of meditation or spirituality is lessening the emotions. The sign of educated Buddhist scholar is really humble, no arrogance. So from that point of view, when we see our emotions are stronger, we need to put more energy, not thinking like, oh, meditation is not helping and I haven't been practicing this and that, but we may want to put more effort, and we may want to develop more mindfulness and antidotes to pacifying the strong emotions. So I do not think it's important to think like, oh, am I burning? Is this the sign of burning my karma or not? The most important thing is find the way to not pursuing, not chasing.
I would just add that Rinpoche often says, for example, when you're angry, that you're experiencing hell realm. And that Rinpoche often says, we don't really need to worry about if we believe in past and future lives. We don't need to worry about whether we think the 6 realms are real. These Buddhist ideas are not that important. But what is important is that we create hell realms when we have strong emotions. We feel like we're in hell. We feel like there's no worse it could get. And from that point of view, it's really worth it to, just invest more time in practice. And I agree with what Rinpoche said, but I also think the more emphasis that we put on mindfulness and introspection, sometimes the more prominent we feel our emotions are, because we're putting so much emphasis on them and we're trying to work with them, and that can make it feel like a stronger disruption in the mind because we've been avoiding so much in the past. But again, I don't think that that's a bad thing. It's good to try to look from the outside and notice, is that just my sensitivity to recognizing my emotions more, or is that really something that I need to correct? Is there really a worse change happening?
Sorry, Rinpoche, we're a very shy Sangha. So please feel free to come up and ask a question now or never. Unless you want to go to
I'm not going to bite.
Well, he might.
Unless you have a tail.
We got someone.
This is more of a seeing if I'm maybe require a correction. I've heard from other teachings, I can't remember specific ones, that also one way of dealing with negative emotions emerging when you're meditating is actually to confront them and focus your mind on them to deconstruct them. And a lot of times that diminishes the power by turning and confronting the negative emotions. So unpacking that anger, unpacking that sadness. Is that a productive way of approaching it, or would you say there are problems in that?
Can you explain, when you say confront it, do you mean like actually examine whether it has a lasting or permanent nature, or do you mean just simply looking at it?
Exactly. Seeing and actually looking at, okay, how is this physically making me feel? When you kind of start to see the emptiness in that emotion, when you're really kind of trying to say, okay, what really is this that I'm experiencing? Whereas I don't feel like I'm getting that there's also, it's something not necessarily just to be avoided, but to have something that you should actually be, instead of, it's almost chasing the tail more aggressively in a way, but it's to a different end.
So, yeah, sure, I will say something. I think it's the antidote. You're using different antidotes and different methods to find a way to letting go of that tail you're chasing. So it's fine. Doing that is fine. For certain people, it works. But for certain people, it doesn't. Maybe applying bodhicitta, connecting with others who are having same emotions, and praying. Praying works for certain people. And contemplating on finding the source of that anger helps for certain people. It depends on the practitioner. Yeah.
Thank you.
At least we got someone to stand up to the microphone.
It's true.
That's right.
It's true.
Confronting.
Someone has.
There wasn't a bad guy.
We're not forcing you to ask your questions, but if you do, we will try to answer. What's your name?
Jeff.
Are you a part of this Zangmo?
Yes, actually kind of new. We've been coming here for a couple of years. We like to consider ourselves shady Buddhists. The problems I've been having lately in the last few months is I've been finding myself, like you were talking about, becoming angry all the time. And I watch myself doing this, and I'm able to recognize it, and I'm able to see the triggers, but I can't stop it, and I don't know what it is. And I've tried meditation and sanghas and talking to people, and I can't let go of it. And I just seem to be kind of like the analogy of the dog biting its tail. It seems like that, but I'm watching myself doing it, and I'm feeling the pain of it, but I can't stop it. And I don't know what else to do. I've tried meditating, talking to people, and I'm just kind of in this rabid cycle. So is there something I can do to break that cycle?
Well, it takes time, because we haven't been doing that for so long. But I think one maybe method will help you. Work on breathing. So I'm not trying to sell my book, okay? But the Tibetan yoga of breath may help you. So certain situations like what you're describing, breathing technique is the best way. But the thing is, I always tell people, please put Dharma first. So you need to use that antidote, breathing. Not letting that emotion distract you or agitate you, like even worse. Not avoiding if you really work the breath. A lot of the time you can succeed, and you can let go of that. And also mantra recitations. I'm not sure you have that connection to work with a mantra or the really devotional aspiration, the prayers, reciting loudly. All that anger is agitating by wind energy, imbalanced wind energy. So it's so like strong, like hurricane, so strong. Almost you want to do something, but you're hopeless. So that's causing by wind energy. So mantra recitations, breathing, and reciting aspirational prayers loudly really helps. And active yoga. Those reduce temporarily, like physical exercises, but cannot dig the root. But it helps, it can support to reduce. So I think that's slowly you can use those techniques and work on 37 practices of Bodhisattva. Read it. There's anger.
Verse about
I think you get them double matter, and I'm sure double 13. If you do not tame the enemy of your anger inside of you, you cannot tame the external enemies that are causing you to get angry. So read those and just pray and also connect other people who have anger or problems the same as you. And connect with those and use the bodhicitta. Okay, I want to we all release from this like serious, emotional pattern. And use different methods. But the good thing is you're recognizing it. And try to not chasing that pattern. Use mantra recitations, breathing techniques. Just inhale from your nose. Exhale in from your nose. Inhale in from your nose. Try to do abdominal breathing. That will help. But it needs a lot of discipline, mindfulness, and you need to, sometimes that makes things worse.
It's like taking Tibetan medicine.
Yeah, I'm taking this medicine right now that every time I take it, I get really sick, and my doctor's so happy about it. I cried in it, and I feel awful, like it's like poison, and she said, that's a good sign, you know me in 3 days. So sometimes that's what practice is like. Sometimes you feel like you're practicing, and you temporarily feel worse, because you're changing things. You're doing something that feels unfamiliar, it feels different. And part of the acting out the pattern is when we act out a pattern, we feel normal. And there's something about that feels good, even though the result is bad. So anytime that we do something that deviates from that, there is a sense of the discomfort of just feeling bad because we've done something different. And so I think that can come up. But breathing, sometimes it is a practice like that where if you, for some reason, if you really get the practice properly, it can really help. But sometimes when we're working with the breath and we can make it more constricted, we can be too heavy with our effort, and so sometimes it doesn't work. It just depends. You have to become really skillful to work with it that way.
Good. Maybe we have one more person. Whoever.
Orange. This is the Dharma shawl.
That kind of played into my question, where some things have come and gone in my life that have made me uncomfortable, and I'm having trouble determining which things are going to make me stronger and which things will make me sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like which things should I work with to work through, or which things that if I'm able to let it go, how I can decipher the difference of what's going to make me stronger or what's going to make me sicker.
I'll try. So Rinpoche probably has a really different answer than me, because I am probably hearing your question in a different way than he is. Because I'm just thinking from my own life, like I grew up in a family where there was alcoholism, where there was mental illness. So I have like my own ideas about the way that I can really chase things that make me unhealthy. And I think for me, when I got really serious about Dharma practice, one thing that I started to notice was that I would be around certain people or be in certain situations, and I felt very attracted to those people and situations. And I started to recognize that that was not a good sign for me. That a lot of times the things that I thought were really good for me were things I thought were good for me because they felt normal to me. And so they took more investigation. Like I needed to not just jump right into that. And I needed to take some time to figure out if I was going to get into old behavior. So I don't know if that's helpful, but just sort of questioning my initial connection to certain situations or people, and not necessarily trust that's the way it actually is going to be. My initial reaction, my initial response to things is sometimes wrong. I mean, I think that seems good, but later when I really examine, I'm like, oh, I just did the same thing that I'm always doing. So just taking more time. And in the Buddhist teachings, we just call that examination. Just doing a lot more examination, not in a skeptical way, not in like a jaded sort of way, but really like, I really have to get to know, before I make a decision, I really just have to get to know how that's going to affect me. And then another thing is, I also started to notice the way certain situations or people brought up certain thought patterns that I recognize as being unhealthy in myself. So I'm not judging the people or the situation, but for me, if I'm going to stay out of unhealthy behavior, especially that I feel like it was just sort of taught to me through my childhood. I'm not judging the people in my life, it's just that's the family I grew up in, that's the life I had. But to me, that kind of thinking is really cyclical and fast and repetitive. Like I think in a certain way when I'm in that situation. And more impulsive, definitely. So I look for cues in my own mind. Do I notice myself acting out or reflecting even with mental energy that I know is unhealthy? more impulsive, less careful, less mindful. So I guess that's the way I would answer that question, is personally trying to slow everything down. I don't need to know yet. I mean, I need to take more time to figure it out, and I need to not make impulsive decisions and not act impulsively. And I noticed for myself even now, that impulsive side of my own personality, I don't even really noticing it come up anymore. But if I do notice it come up, I'm like, whoa, something's really not okay for me. You know, I'm not putting that on anyone else. Other people are free to be who they are, but I need to make sure that I'm okay so that I can participate. You know, I have a lot of responsibility. I take care, I look after a lot of people at the center. I need to make sure I'm looking after them in a healthy way. And if I'm not healthy, I can't do that. So that's my answer, but I'm sure. Kobi Danta Kimezo, condition capable to guru, the pental yoria dan kyonyoria, kongi capable to like Kong Maradoria, Churbanina, Kogutsu to
So, I'm not sure I have more things to add on what she said, but it's really important to being in a positive environment, and that helps you to improve. That's also, there is a verse in 37 Practices of Bodhisattva. If you rely on positive environment, your quality of body, speech, mind improving like a waxing moon. But if you're relying on an environment which has a lot of conflicts and agitations and 5 poisons, contaminated by 5 poisons, day by day you're going to sink down and down. So it's good to find an environment has positive energies, and more like if you want a spiritual community, bodhicitta. Main practice is the way of Bodhisattva path. You won't make any mistake. If the community, if the environment you're around is putting others first, you won't have any danger. But it's good to take time to not be too critical, as Allison would say. Examination is really good. It's not good to enter the spiritual path like a hunting dog chasing deer. And hunting dog don't know how fast that deer runs, and we exhaust ourselves. But it's not examine too extreme way, never committed to anything, just doing this circle. But it's good to move skillfully, slowly, and really commit to the path. That's really important. It doesn't matter if you commit to the path, commit to the practice. Sooner or later, winner is you. But if we cannot commit, sooner or later, the person who's losing is us.
It's a really good hashtag, isn't it? Sooner or later, the winner is you.
Okay. Okay, one more then.
Inspired by the hashtag.
Yes, exactly. Good morning to you both. Jeff, who came up and shared his frustrations and interest in improvement, and the answer you gave is actually really relevant to myself as well. But there was a word used while we're treating, I may use the wrong word, the symptoms or the end product, the negative end product. The word root was used.
Root.
we might be dealing just with the surface layer, but there's a root.
You said you can't dig out the root.
And so I'm wondering, what is it just continue continue until eventually you get to that root, or is there a different or more, I don't know how to put it, extreme sort of
Is there a
methodology?
stronger practice that digs out the
Yeah.
root, or how do we dig out the root?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I suggest the most powerful practice is what Bodhisattva. Because we always put others first. This root grows so strong because of self-attachment and ego and identity, which we attach to the most. To be able to slowly eradicate this root is what Bodhisattva path. I'm sure there are paths like higher Tantra teachings in Tibetan, Vajrayana, and Buddhist tradition, but even though teachings are so powerful, but we do not have that ability to use it, abide it for a longer period of time, or we do not have that ability to really experience that practice, like Dzogpa Chenpo or Mahamudra. Of course, they say okay, transform 5 poisons into wisdom. Sounds so cool. We all want that. It's almost like effortlessly, everyone can do it. But we have to be honest and with ourselves, how strong this root is. It's just like read Milareva's biography, and he met a Nyingma master and said, "Oh, my Dzogpa Chenpo, effortless. If you practice morning, you liberate in the morning. If you practice evening, you liberate in the evening." And Milarepa thought, I am the luckiest man, and I cursed, and I killed so many beings, and I met this path, and he slept.
And he practiced.
And he didn't practice. And then Yang Tong realized, this Nyingma master realized, oh, I was kind of wrong. And he said, okay, you need to go to Marpa. You know? And then he sent him to Marpa and read the biography. What things Milarepa did. And when took a lot of hardship to purify karma based on his body and speech, mind, you know. And of course, then he had the potential. He was the proper vessel for Mahamudra, and he liberated one lifetime. At one point, he could do it, could transform 5 poisons into wisdom, and the more 5 poisons is stronger, the realization became much more stronger. But we're not there yet. So the most safe and effective path is a Lojong practice, and not making sure blaming on yourself, blaming on others. This is the combination of external things, the cause, the conditions, and the cause is self-attachment.
Good.